Everybody, and welcome to the Garage, the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton's behind the camera. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to ease myself or ourselves into today and tomorrow. You know, the new regime where we record here in the garage and we post on Facebook an entry of the Court of Public Opinion, which is then taken up, thanks to Andy Martin, as a podcast and sent everywhere. Amazingly, I don't still even understand how it works. But on this day, which is the anniversary of what we could say the birth of the computer, the very birthday of the computer, everything is possible. We'll get to the birthdays later. But thank you for bearing with us. I came down with COVID. I pride myself on not getting sick. I just don't like getting sick. I don't have a lot of tolerance for getting sick. But I went to a I don't know what you'd call it, a meeting, something like that, big meeting. Pauline Hanson asked me if I would come along and introduce her and her guests, and I said yes, I will do that, because I've long admired Pauline Hanson. Anyway, I think that's where I picked it up. So sort of 1,000 people, and everyone was milling around. So if you're going to get something, I think that's the sort of environment where you'll get it. Anyway, it is what it is. I'm over it now. I've just got to get my strength back. Docs, you're round. God. Pete went out and got another needle, didn't you?
Yeah, once I knew you had
six.
it.
I've had 5 needles. I will, in due course, get my 6th. Maybe getting COVID gives you some measure of immunity in itself. I'm not sure. Hard to work out what is the folklore and what is the science and what is the reality. But it's okay. Just like a bad cold, serious sort of bronchitis kind of feeling. Anyway, we'll be all right. Don't forget our Friday program, Around the Dining Room Table, jeremycordeaux.com, 3 hours live streaming with lots of interesting guests. I wanted to show you this because I've kept it for years and years and years. It is a promotion for a movie that Oliver Stone made about talk radio. And it was simply called Talk Radio. And the advertising catchphrase, if you like, was "Words can kill. Words can kill." But the funny thing was, this was a giveaway by the producers of the movie. And it's a battery-powered radio. But the funny thing is that I don't know that... No, I can't turn it on because it hasn't got new batteries in it. But what happens is, when it finds a radio station, talk radio station, of course, the lips move to the sound of the announcer on the air, which is pretty spooky. I've been wanting to tell you about that for a while, because I think that is one of the best promotional giveaways I have seen in my 60 and more years of broadcasting, of being in the industry. Words can kill. Talk radio. Oliver Stone. Yes, yes, yes. Anyway, lots happened in the last little while, last few days, and I really, honestly don't know where to start. Let me start with the Eraring coal-fired power station. I'm not sure what Eraring means, but anyway, it is a big station in New South Wales, going to stay open for another 2 years, beyond its cancellation date. But really, they are saying that it will stay open until blackouts are no longer a possibility, which will, while they persevere with these alternatives, being the ultimate source of our electricity, it'll of course be never. I mean, how long is a piece of string? It just is not going to happen. They will have to keep these coal-fired power stations and gas-fired power stations open for as long as they possibly can. But you can't expect the people who run these companies to put in the maintenance when they know that there is no longevity to the policy of the government. It's all quite unbelievable that we've found ourselves in this philosophical cul-de-sac. If you want a single example of how stupid this government's policy is on energy and renewables in particular, and greenhouse gas, global warming, the whole shebang, you just have to look at what they do, not what they say. We export most of our gas and most of our coal to China and India. Elsewhere, of course, but mostly to China and India. Great source of foreign revenue. They are going to use it to generate cheap electricity. Well, what did you think they were going to do with it? They're going to use it to generate cheap electricity, which gives them a huge manufacturing advantage and economic superiority. We can't get the benefit from our own resources because of this government's policy and ideology. Yet these other people can, just on the basis of this observation, no, it's more than an observation, it's the truth. We should reject this whole concept that Canberra is feeding us. These people in Canberra are liars and hypocrites and do not represent the best interests of Australia or Australians. The sooner we get rid of them, the better. But the damage they do on the way out will be incalculable. While the major parties argue about renewables versus nuclear, we should be using our coal and gas to secure our social and economic advantage right now. Right now! And if it's good enough for the Chinese and the Indians to use our resources without condemnation, it has to be acceptable that we use those same resources ourselves. These people in Canberra cannot be so schizophrenic. No, we can't burn our coal and gas. But of course, we are selling it to people who will. And do you know, the really indecent thing about all of this is we do not have a media that is going to stand up to this Prime Minister and confront him with this inescapable, however embarrassing, truth. This Prime Minister says he will stay the course on renewables. When confronted with the inadequacies, costs, difficulties, embarrassments, well, he's not really confronted, as I've said. The media is useless. Does it remind you of anything? It does me. He did the same thing with The Voice. Exactly the same thing. Stubborn determination, denial, arrogance. This is the way it's going to be. as I say, the sooner we can get rid of those people, the better. Also, in the news is this thing about consent. Pete, have you thought about any of that? Consent?
No.
I mean, I've lived 78 years, and I have never in my entire life ever been confronted with a situation where consent was an issue. And now it's something that we are going to have to indoctrinate our children with.
Well, you're talking about consent in what area?
Well, consent in terms of a relationship.
Yeah.
May I kiss you?
Yeah.
Can we make love? Can I walk you home?
They're talking about a baby has to consent to have its nappy changed, all this sort of...
Well, all that sort of, that's where it's going to lead.
Yes.
It is just absolute woke crap nonsense. People
Yes.
have been sorting out things like that forever. You do not need legislation to tell you when somebody has crossed the line. This is about parenting. You bring children up, girls to understand, boys to respect. What's happening to this world? It should not be a big issue. A talking point? Fine. Fine. A talking point is fine. I want to talk to you about that on Friday around the dining room table. JeremyCordeau.com. I think it's an important thing to discuss. The Brits will reintroduce national service if the Conservatives are re-elected. Now, it's really the same thing that's happening in other countries in Europe. The Germans are going to do exactly the same thing. I don't think there is an election as an obstacle to their reintroduction of national service, but the Brits are going to make a thing of it. It's all about Russia and a problematic situation which could develop daily in Europe. You know, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And the Brits know, as the Germans do too, I suspect, that you cannot take things for granted. You can't just say everything will be predictably as we want it to be. You have to be prepared. You know, you can't control your borders, you will lose your country. Ask any Aboriginal, he will tell you. Mind you, there are not a lot of people who talk about border control in Australia these days. The stock market's a whisker away from an all-time high. Amazing. The international economy is terrific at the moment. But, you know, you've got to watch these things. What goes up comes down just as easily. Telstra has lost more money on its share value in the last few days than it will save by all the sackings, which are clearly unpopular. So what's the point? I don't altogether understand public companies and the people who run them. I'm not exactly sure how street smart they are, but clearly they have the levers. All we can do, of course, is just watch and see. But so many times I see companies, the big ones, you know, Qantas, Telstra, big companies, big public companies, doing what I would consider as a novice, stupid things. But, you know, what do you do? What do you do? If you're a shareholder, well, you think carefully about the shares that you hold and the people who have control over their destiny, and you do, or try to, take enough personal interest to go along to the annual general meetings and do more than enjoy the biscuits and the cup of tea. You question the people. You care enough to ask questions and to attend and hold these people to account. If you don't agree with what they're doing publicly, tell them publicly. 109 years ago, last Wednesday, 109 years ago last Wednesday, we became the first country in the world to introduce compulsory voting. I've still got two minds about compulsory voting. What's the point of forcing people to go along to cast a vote if they don't have any interest or concern? Mind you, the law is fairly simple. You just have to go along and get your name crossed off. You don't actually have to vote. So it's a bit of a misnomer. Pete, I might wind up there because I don't want to run out of voice. We have one more show to do for tomorrow.
Yes.
But let me wish you a happy birthday. Get my glasses on. Happy birthday. May the 28th. Golly, golly. Yes, Alan Turing submits on this day in 1936 on computable numbers for publication. That was his thesis, on computable numbers. He sets out the theoretical basis of the modern computer in that article, that thesis, on this day, all those years ago, 1936. My God, we've come a long way. Good old Alan Turing. Also, happy birthday to Kylie Minogue, Australian pop singer, songwriter. Can't get you out of my head. Actress from Neighbours and, all points, north, south, east and west. She looks remarkable, doesn't she, Pete?
Oh, yes.
Well, let me see.
She's 55, I think.
Yeah. Born this day in 1968. Gladys Knight, American singer known as the Empress of Soul. Her group was called the Pips. Gladys Knight and the Pips, midnight train to Georgia. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, on this day in 1944, 1 year older than me. Edward and Andre Michelin incorporate the Michelin Tire Company on this day in 1889. And on the same day, different year, 1928, the year, the Dodge brothers and the Chrysler Corporation merge. Dodge. The Dodge had a lovely car called the Dodge Phoenix, I remember. That was a great American car. A bit like the Thunderbird. I think it was bigger than the Thunderbird. Nice car, though. First swimming pool opens, Goodman's Field in London, the first indoor swimming pool. The year was 1742. 1742, Pete.
Really?
For an indoor swimming pool. Yeah. Joan of Arc is accused of relapsing into heresy by donning male clothing again, providing justification for her execution. My God, if that was the criteria for execution, you'd put half the female population to death, wouldn't you? God. That was 1431. Patrick White, the Australian novelist and playwright, Happy Valley. the Nobel Prize winner for literature in 73, born London, died 1990. Patrick White, born this day, the same year my mother was born, 1912. US patent filed for the hydrogen bomb on this day in 1946. I wouldn't have thought you'd have needed a patent for the hydrogen bomb. You just walked in with it, and they would have given you carte blanche, surely. No, apparently there's a patent for the hydrogen bomb. There you go, 1946. Noah Webster, American lexicographer, Webster's Dictionary, dies at 84 on this day in 1843. The White House plumbers first break in at the Democratic National Headquarters, Watergate and all of that, installing their devices at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. on this day in 1972. Wow. John Fogerty, American songwriter, guitarist, singer, Creedence Clearwater. Have you ever seen the rain looking out my back door? Born in Berkeley, California. Do you say Berkeley or Berkeley?
Berkeley.
Berkeley. Well, the English say Berkeley.
Do they?
Yeah. And the Americans call it Berkeley. Anyway, 1945, born the same year I was born. Andrew Jackson signs the Indian Removal Act on this day in 1830, which was a terrible, terrible thing, actually. A key law leading to the forced removal of the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole tribes out of Georgia and the surrounding states, setting the stage for the Cherokee Trial or Trail of Tears, 1830. And I think that should be about it. Oh, Gary Coleman died, sadly. He had a stroke at the age of 42. Rudy Giuliani, American mayor of New York City, 1994 to 2001. He was born in New York City, 1944. And Tom Uren, Australian politician, Australian Heritage Conservation campaigner, born Sydney, died 2015. One of the old-fashioned, old-style Labor guys. Good guy, Tom Uren. Spent a lot of time in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, too. 1921. He was born. Anyway, if you remember the day, I hope it'll be a very happy one. Thank you very much for being with us here in the Court of Public Opinion. We'll be back tomorrow with another of our postings. And of course on Friday, jeremycordeaux.com, around the dining room table, live streaming, phone calls, guests, music, the whole shebang. Thank you so much. Peter Clayton behind the camera. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Believe in yourself, and goodbye from the Court of Public Opinion.